Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a sliver of water that's one of the most important and most vulnerable shipping lanes on the entire planet. This is the Strait of Malacca. Think of it as a vital artery for global trade, connecting the Indian and Pacific Oceans. But here's the thing. This artery is under some serious pressure. It's becoming a flashpoint for global competition, high-tech crime, and just billion-dollar ambitions. Okay, let's get into it. Every single year, a mind-boggling 90,000 ships pass through this waterway. To put that in perspective, that's about a quarter of all the world's traded goods. It's the planet's second busiest maritime oil choke point, right after the Strait of Hormuz, which makes it absolutely critical for our global energy supply. But the problem isn't just the sheer number of ships, it's the tiny space they all have to squeeze through.
And this is where it gets kind of crazy. At its narrowest point, in a section called the Phillip Channel, the strait shrinks down to just 1.7 nautical miles wide. Just let that sink in for a second. You have thousands of these massive vessels. We're talking giant oil tankers and container ships, all being funneled through this one tiny bottleneck. It's a recipe for congestion, for accidents, and, for some major vulnerabilities.
So why does this one congested superhighway create such a massive strategic headache for one global power in particular? It's a problem so big it actually has its own name, and it's driving a multi-trillion-dollar strategy that's reshaping the globe as we speak.
And that brings us to what foreign policy experts call the Malacca dilemma. And yeah, it's all about China's deep-seated vulnerability right here, in this one critical choke point.
At its heart, the Malacca dilemma is really China's fear that its entire economic lifeline could be choked off. The nightmare scenario is that a hostile power could, pretty easily, set up a naval blockade in this narrow strait. That would cut off the vital flow of energy and goods that fuels its whole economy. And this strategic weakness has become a huge driver of its foreign policy.
And this number, wow, this really shows you just how dependent China is. A full 80% of its oil imports coming by sea have to pass through the Strait of Malacca. So a blockade here isn't just an inconvenience. It would be a catastrophic threat to its energy security, to its economic stability. So faced with this massive dilemma, what did China do?
Well, China's answer was one of the most ambitious infrastructure projects in all of human history, the Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI. It is a direct and incredibly expensive attempt to solve the Malacca dilemma once and for all.
There's this famous quote from Napoleon that feels almost prophetic now. With the Belt and Road, you could say China has truly woken up and it's trying to reshape global trade routes on an absolutely epic scale. The goal is to build this huge web of alternative land and sea routes, bypasses, really, to reduce its dependency on this single point of failure.
And the amount of money being poured into this is just immense. I mean, look at just one project, the Malacca Gateway in Malaysia. It's a joint venture estimated to cost around $10 billion, and its goal is to build a brand new deep-sea port and industrial park right there on the strait. And here's another example, the expansion of Kuantan Port, also in Malaysia. Investment from the BRI has basically doubled its annual cargo capacity to 52 million tons, turning it into a major hub that's connected to China's so-called maritime Silk Road.
So the strategy is pretty clear. By funding and building this vast network of infrastructure, Beijing is trying to create backups, right? If the Strait of Malacca ever gets blocked, trade can be rerouted through other places like Pakistan's Godar port or through new rail links across Southeast Asia. But, and this is a huge but, this grand plan has created a whole new set of problems because this whole strategy has turned out to be a classic double-edged sword. Far from getting rid of the risks, China's bigger presence and all the activity that comes with it have actually turned the strait into a hotspot for new, really sophisticated threats.
Piracy, for one, is still a massive problem. In just one recent year, there were 135 incidents around the world. And as you can see, a staggering 38 of them happened right here. That concentration makes it a global piracy hotspot. But we're not talking about your swashbuckling pirates from the movies. No, the modern pirates playbook is shockingly high-tech. We're talking about coordinated teams using encrypted communications and even GPS spoofing to make a hijacked ship just vanish from tracking systems. They've even tried to launch cyber attacks to infiltrate a ship's navigation before they even board. And kidnapping for ransom?
Well, it's become a very lucrative business, with demands going as high as $1.5 million.
And it's not just pirates. The sheer amount of traffic makes the strait a perfect superhighway for illegal trade. You name it, it's probably moving through these waters. Everything from narcotics like heroin and meth, to huge weapons caches, including RPGs and even surface-to-air missiles. And it's also a major corridor for wildlife trafficking, moving tons of ivory and pangolin scales. It's wild.
So when you have this combination of huge strategic importance and all this growing risk, it's inevitable other global powers get drawn in. And that has turned the entire region into a really complex geopolitical chessboard.
And this is where that chessboard really starts to get crowded. China's Belt and Road Initiative kicked off a whole wave of countermoves from other big players. You've got Japan pushing its Partnership for Quality Infrastructure, which focuses on transparency. India has its own Sagar Doctrine, which is all about security and building its own strategic ports. And the US is leading the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, trying to create different channels for investment. It's a clear game of influence.
And you can see this pattern of action and reaction play out right here on the timeline. China makes its big move with the BRI in 2013. Just a couple of years later, bam, India and Japan launch their own strategic responses. Then the US follows with the IPEF. It is a classic move and countermove playing out on a global scale.
So who's caught in the middle of this high-stakes game? Well, it's the countries that actually border the strait, like Malaysia and Indonesia. They have to do this incredibly delicate balancing act, trying to take advantage of the massive economic opportunities from China, while also worrying about things like debt, sovereignty, and just getting sucked into these big power rivalries.
So where does this all go from here? The future of the Strait of Malacca really hangs in the balance. Is it going to become a bridge for cooperation, or is it going to become a dangerous fault line for future conflict?
Well, experts point to a few key things that could help ensure stability. First, beefing up security with more joint patrols and better intelligence sharing. Second, improving governance, making investment deals more transparent so countries don't fall into debt traps. Third, boosting safety with new tech, like AI-driven traffic systems to prevent accidents. And finally, trying to foster neutrality, using regional groups like ASEAN to help balance the influence of all these global giants.
And ultimately, it all comes back to this question. This narrow channel is so much more than just a shipping lane. It's a perfect snapshot of our interconnected, but also very competitive world. As the giants play their strategic games, the fate of this global artery is really going to depend on whether the nations of the region can build bridges of cooperation faster than the forces of rivalry can create fault lines of conflict. And the answer to that is going to shape global trade for decades to come.